Is that supposed to be a prop? The words dripped with condescension as they sliced through the heavy air of the courtroom. They came from Judge Albright, a man whose perfectly tailored suit barely contained his swelling ego. He leaned forward over the gleaming oak of his bench, eyes narrowing at the small, time-worn metal hanging from a blue ribbon around the elderly man's neck. Martin Kelly didn't respond. At 87, he understood the power of silence better than most. His aged, memory-worn hands rested calmly on the wheels of his chair as he waited for the moment to pass. He didn't move. In the gray haze of bureaucracy that was Courtroom 3B on a Tuesday morning, Martin Kelly sat like a quiet island, untouched by the chaos around him. The judge was talking, but Martin's gaze remained fixed on the American flag in the corner its colors faded beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. "Sir, I am addressing you." Judge Albright's voice snapped like a brittle branch, his patience long gone. The bailiff, a heavy-set man, who had been drifting towards, sleep-shifted uncomfortably, the leather of his belt groaning as he straightened. "The rules of this courtroom are clear," the judge continued. "No hats, no sunglasses, no decorative medallions. Remove it." Martin's public defender, David, a young, nervous attorney who still looked like he was fresh out of school, shot upright. "Your Honor, my client is not wearing it as decoration. That medal is part of his identity. It's a military commend. I don't care if it's a key to the city council." Albright cut him off with a dismissive wave. "This is a court of law, not a parade ground. It's a distraction and an obvious attempt to win sympathy. It won't work. Now take it off, or you'll be held in contempt." The charge against Martin was absurd, an overgrown hedge. A new neighbor had complained while Martin was at a VA appointment. Missing the first notice had landed him here before a petty man playing king. A heavy silence filled the room. The spectators, each waiting for their own small crises to be judged, murmured quietly. Their eyes darted between the judge's red, impatient face and the elderly man in the wheelchair. Martin's expression didn't change. Quiet dignity radiated from him, and the silence only seemed to aggravate the judge further. "Did you hear me, old man?" Albright barked, the polished veneer of authority cracking to expose raw ego beneath. "Are you deaf, as well as stubborn?" Bailiff assists the defendant. The bailiff lumbered forward, reluctant but obligated. His large frame cast a shadow across Martin's shoulders. "Sir," he said softly, surprising even himself. "You heard the judge. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Martin slowly turned his head, his pale blue eyes meeting the bailiff's, not the judge's. He didn't need to look at Albright. He knew the type. Men who mistook rank for honor, men who believed a robe made them wise. In a low, steady voice, he finally spoke. "This medal does not come off." Albright's face flushed a deep crimson. "That is a direct refusal of a court order." "You are in contempt, Mr. Kelly. What is that thing anyway? A VFW prize for best parade float?" A few sycophantic chuckles drifted from the prosecutor's table. David looked horrified. "Your Honor, that is the medal of—" "I'm done with this." The judge cut him off sharply. Pointing at Martin, he snapped. "One last chance. Remove that trinket, or I'll have you escorted to a holding cell to think about respect for the law." Trinket. The words struck like a blow. For a moment, the courtroom blurred. The stale disinfectant smell faded, replaced by the sting of gunpowder and scorching foreign dust. The judge's face vanished, replaced by that of a 4-star general standing on a makeshift stage at a forward operating base. Martin, just 20 then, wrapped in bandages, ears ringing from battle, stood tall. The general had placed the blue ribbon around his neck with hands that shook from emotion. "Son, your country can never repay you, but it will never forget." The memory evaporated, leaving behind an ache that had nothing to do with age. It was the ache of a promise being broken. Near the back of the courtroom, a young prosecutor named Ben Carter, sitting in a suit slightly too large, had been absently scrolling his phone. But the commotion drew his eyes upward, and when he saw the medal clearly, he froze. His father had been a colonel. Ben knew military honors. He recognized the ribbon. He recognized the stars. It couldn't be. There were so few in existence. As the judge continued his tirade, Ben felt anger building inside him, a cold, righteous fury. This wasn't courtroom procedure anymore. This was desecration. Judge Albright leaned back smugly. Let the record show the defendant refuses to comply. We will take a brief recess. When we return, Mr. Kelly will either be without that medal or he will be in custody. He swept dramatically into his chambers. Ben saw his moment. Heart pounding, he slipped into the hallway and fumbled for his phone. Not his boss. Not the court. He scrolled to a name he never expected to call. His father's former executive officer, now a colonel at the Pentagon. The line connected. Colonel Hayes. Certs Ben Carter. General Carter's son, Ben. Good to hear from you. How, sir? I'm sorry. Something is happening, and I didn't know who else to call. Words spilled out of him about the judge, the wheelchair, the hedge, the medal. He called it a trinket, sir. He's threatening to jail him. The veteran's name is Martin Kelly. Silence. Deep, stunned silence. When Colonel Hayes spoke again, his voice was steel. Say that name again, Martin Kelly, sir. Ben heard a chair scrape. Papers scatter. Where are you? Give me the address. The courtroom number? Ben told him everything. Stay there, the colonel ordered. Do not let that judge put his hands on him. Help is already on the way. The call ended. Ben stared at his phone, realizing he had just set massive wheels in motion. At the nearby army base, Colonel Hayes wasn't walking. He was moving with purpose, cutting through the halls. He didn't knock on the commanding general's door. He pushed it open. General Thompson looked up mid-meeting, eyebrows rising. Sir, forgive the interruption, Hayes said, his voice clipped. But I just received a call about a situation downtown. He laid out the facts quickly. The last name he spoke, Martin Kelly, hit the room like a detonator. All conversation ceased. General Thompson's expression darkened, his shock turning to controlled fury. Martin Kelly, he said quietly. Sergeant Major Martin Kelly? You're certain? Positive, sir. The general stood so abruptly his chair slid back. That man is a legend. He is the standard. He turned to his aide. Get the car. And my dress uniform. We leave immediately. And to Hayes. Get a security detail. 2 vehicles. Class A uniforms. We will be there in 15 minutes. The headquarters erupted into a storm of controlled urgency. Phones rang, orders snapped through hallways, and the name Martin Kelly traveled like a shockwave. Every soldier who heard it felt the same thing. A line had been crossed. It was as if someone had vandalized a national monument. It would not be tolerated. Back in courtroom 3B, the recess ended. Judge Albright strutted back to the bench wearing a smug smile, expecting to find an old man cowed into compliance, medal removed, pride broken. Instead, Martin Kelly sat exactly as before, still calm, the blue riband medal resting proudly against his chest. The judge's smirk curdled into irritation. So you've chosen foolishness, he hissed. Your behavior is contemptible. You disgrace this courtroom with your stubborn pride. He leaned in, eyes hardening. Bailiff, take Mr. Kelly into custody. He will serve 48 hours for contempt, and I am ordering a psychiatric evaluation. A man his age behaving so irrationally is a danger to himself and others. This was beyond arrogance, it was cruelty. A weaponized humiliation meant to strip Martin of dignity, identity, and sanity. David, the young public defender, shot to his feet, desperation rising, but before he could speak, the heavy courtroom doors opened, not loudly, not violently, but with the slow, deliberate authority of men who never needed to shout to be heard. 3 soldiers stepped inside. Uniforms immaculate in deep army green. Their shoes shone like mirrors, their ribbons precise, their presence electrifying. And at their center walked a man who carried 4 silver stars on each shoulder. Asterisk. General Thompson, the bailiff, froze mid-step. His hand, inches from Martin's arm, fell away as though burned. A silence deeper than reverence settled over the room as the 3 men advanced. Their footsteps crisp on the linoleum, they never glanced at the judge. Not once. Their focus was fixed only on Martin Kelly. General Thompson stopped before the wheelchair. For a long, breath-held moment, the two men simply regarded each other, one a forgotten hero, the other a guardian of the Army's living legacy. Then, with perfect, measured precision, the general raised his right hand in a solemn salute. The two officers mirrored him instantly. 3 salutes sharp, reverent, unwavering, offered to a wounded veteran over a trivial hedge citation. The sound of their hands meeting their brows echoed like a drumbeat in the stunned courtroom. Judge Albright sputtered, finally finding his voice. "W.O. is the meaning of this. You have no authority here. This is a court of law." The general did not look at him. He spoke to Martin, his voice rich and commanding, filling every corner of the room. "Sergeant Major Martin Kelly, it is an honor to stand in your presence, sir." Only then did he turn slightly toward the bewildered judge and the silent gallery. "For those unfamiliar," the general said, his tone cold and razor-sharp, "allow me to explain who this man is." He stepped forward. 65 years ago, in the frozen hills of Korea, Sergeant Kelly's platoon was ambushed. Wounded in the first volley, his platoon leader killed. He held his position alone for 3 days, bleeding from 3 gunshot wounds. He repelled multiple enemy assaults, shielded for wounded soldiers, and directed artillery on his own position to save his company. He refused evacuation until every one of his men was safe. Whispers of shock rippled through the gallery. "The trinket you ordered him to remove," the general said, his gaze drilling into Albright, "is the Medal of Honor, the highest award for valor this nation can bestow." A collective gasp rolled across the room. This medal is not a decoration. It is not optional. It represents a debt this country can never repay. Judge Albright's face drained of color. The authority he wielded minutes ago now looked pitiful in his trembling hands. General Thompson turned back to Martin. And finally Martin spoke, his voice quiet but carrying decades of weight in the stillness of the room. "Respect," Martin said, lifting his eyes to the general but speaking to everyone in the room. "Respect isn't something you earn through robes or gavels. It doesn't come from titles. It comes from what you do when no one else is watching, how you treat people, especially those you believe have no power." He slowly turned his head, his steady, unshaken gaze locking on to Judge Albright. "You wanted me to respect your courtroom, sir? But you showed none for the man who walked into it. That's the difference." His quiet, forceful words hung in the air, more devastating than anything the general could have said, as Martin spoke of respect and sacrifice. A final memory flickered in his mind. Not the ceremony, not the honor, but a moment just before the third assault, lying behind a frozen log, rifle jammed in the cold, leg blazing with pain. Beside him, a young private from Ohio Miller shivered, not from the winter, but from pure terror. Martin had reached out, frostbitten fingers clumsy inside his glove, and rested a firm hand on the boy's shoulder. "Stay with me, son," he had whispered. "Just stay with me." It was that moment human connection in the shadow of death that the medal truly came from. Not for fighting, for holding on. The aftermath was swift and absolute. General Thompson personally escorted Sergeant Major Martin Kelly out of the courthouse. A crowd had gathered, drawn by the convoy of black government vehicles and the presence of uniformed soldiers. News cameras rolled. The story had already spread. Within a week, Judge Albright was placed on indefinite administrative leave, pending a full investigation by the state's Judicial Conduct Commission. His career, for all practical purposes, was finished. His name quickly became synonymous with judicial arrogance. In response, the state bar launched a mandatory training program on veteran affairs and cultural sensitivity for all court personnel, quietly nicknamed the Kelly Rule. The city dismissed the citation about Martin's overgrown hedge and even sent a Parks Department crew to clean and landscape his entire yard. About a month later, as Martin sat on a park bench, enjoying the afternoon sun, a man in a wrinkled suit approached. Albright, smaller, without his robe, face lined with shame. He hesitated, then spoke in a thin voice. "Mr. Kelly, I wanted to apologize personally. What I did was inexcusable. I was arrogant, cruel, and wrong. I'm deeply, deeply sorry." Martin looked up at the man who once tried to belittle him and felt no triumph, only sorrow for someone who had lost himself. He motioned to the empty space on the bench. Albright sat. "We all make mistakes," Martin said, watching children play across the lawn. "The real lesson is what we take from them. The uniform, the robe, the wheelchair, those are just things. What matters is the person wearing them. Don't forget that." They remained there quietly, two men from different worlds, forever connected by one unforgettable afternoon in a forgotten courtroom. Stories like Sergeant Major Kelly's remind us that heroes walk among us every day, often in the most ordinary forms. If his courage and dignity moved you, please like the video, share it, and subscribe to Nexo Stories for more.